Who's against any of these things? Who's against world peace? Who's against harmony between man and nature? Who's against common prosperity? Nobody. China's contributed more to global growth in the last decade than all G7 countries put together. 1.4 billion people in China are more than all the developed world put together. They're the leading trader with 140 countries. The trade between China and ASEAN is bigger than the trade between the United States and the EU. So when you start going down through these things, you realize there's a certain reality here that sooner or later the Americans are going to have to accept. And my own opinion is the sooner that gets understood and accepted, the better. And that the relationship has got to get better, because if it doesn't get better, then everything I was saying about 2050 is just going off a cliff. If you were reading today the characterization of One Belt, One Road, which is to extend a model of development into as many countries as it wanted, who desperately need it. And when I talked earlier about Chinese modernization that I attended last Monday, so Chinese modernization, I won't go into all the details, but there basically are 5 central characteristics of it. One of which is a peaceful world. Second one of which is common prosperity. Third one of which is harmony between man and nature. So the foreign minister went through this whole thing, and then there were 5 of us asked to comment on it. And I said in my comments, those of us who have ever run anything know, plans are one thing, execution is another. So my advice to you, if you're going to hold yourself out as believing in these things, I mean, who's against any of these things? Who's against world peace? Who's against harmony between man and nature? Who's against common prosperity? Nobody. 10 out of 10 people. There's nobody in this room who's going to be against any of these things. So that's not the issue. The issue is, are you actually going to do what you say you do? And if you don't, you're going to suffer the same negative blowback that countries like the United States get when they were seen as being hypocritical. So that's point number 1. Point number 2, which is extremely important, and a point I want to make to all of you, which is, when I first started spending a lot of time in China, I was chairman of Goldman Sachs Asia in the mid-90s into 2000, at a point in time when the Chinese system was just starting to open up, and so I was in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to give advice. But one thing that struck me about them was the Chinese leadership on almost every topic was systematically open in the following sense. They started with the premise, there's somebody in the world who knows this topic better than we do. Let's get that somebody to Beijing. Let's study what he had to say, see if it applies to us, refine it and customize for our circumstance, and then execute. And they did this time after time after time, which is why back in those days, you would have seen Western CEOs, Western superb academics, Nobel Prize winners and so forth. They met with them routinely, one-on-one, because they knew they were getting very high quality information coming in from people who didn't work for them. Okay, here we are. The power configuration in the current world should not be defined as competition between China and the United States for hegemony. Rather, we witness a shift from the situation in which a single civilization dominated the globe to common prosperity of diverse civilizations. What China has inaugurated is not a Chinese century, but a century of diverse civilizations, a new era in which there will no longer be a single civilizational hegemon. And that's exactly the way the Chinese see it. As opposed to, Joe Biden says, this is the century of democracies versus autocracies. Some of the funnier, more clever Chinese will say, no, it's the plutocracy versus the meritocracy. The best way to think about that is, the Chinese is essentially the meritocratic elite. In the same way that if you look back through Chinese history, you don't get to Tsinghua University if you're not very able. 10 million kids a year take the national examinations to go to university. The top 3,000 of those go to Tsinghua University. And Tsinghua University accounts for 50% of the leadership of the country. So that the examination-based culture, which has existed for 2,000 years, still exists. And essentially, that's what drives the input into all these institutions. If you get to the top of the Chinese system, there's no chance you're not very smart and very able. That's the Chinese system. When they talk about common prosperity, for example, you might say that's the equivalent of trying to fix income inequality that we would talk about. But the other day, another Chinese was saying to me, the capitalist system is essentially a divide and conquer system. The Chinese modernization is a unifying system. They're proud of the fact they've lifted 800 million people out of poverty. That's the most ever in history by a long, long way. And they think those people ought to continue to advance.